Hey y'all, it's Mandy. Before we talk about this week's episode, I want to say shout out to the patrons. Y'all are the reason I'm still doing this. I could do it alone, but it's so much better to run with people who share your vision, share your values, and see the importance of the work you're doing. So if you're interested in all the premium content, hearing about the questions and answers, or even being a part of our live patron chats, check out my Patreon. It's under @MandyCapehart, or you can search for Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart and find it that way. Welcome back to Restorative Grief with Mandy Capehart. You are listening to episode 72, titled The Framework of Restorative Grief. Hello, it's Mandy, and I'm super glad you're here. This week, we're going to dig a little deeper into the model on which restorative grief is founded. There are many wonderful theories and frameworks in the mental health world for grievers to work with, but in my experience, I felt each of them was a bit lacking. So when I first launched my practice, I wanted to prepare and offer a framework with nuance and movement available to each person while still creating meaning no matter where you land in your grief journey. As it turned out, this framework is what helped me realize where healing could be found in my own experience. So I truly hope it offers the same to you. This morning when you woke up, I hope you already knew you were a whole person. Maybe you felt a little out of sorts, physically drained, mentally exhausted, emotionally fatigued, or spiritually indifferent. In fact, the most frequent statement I hear from grievers is that they feel broken, like a shell of their former selves, without a clear hope that one day they'll return to themselves and feel whole again. And while you may feel broken, that's far from the truth. Much in the same way we might feel sad, we are living out a very commonly tread path of human experience. Sadness, brokenness, joy, laughter, they're all part of this life experiment and are necessary parts to the whole as well. So, in the same way, experiencing a sense of brokenness allows us to notice where our whole selves are misaligned. We can ask ourselves, what feels off? It's not just that we're grieving and everything's up in the air. In fact, when we say everything feels crazy, it's a nebulous way of describing our grief experience, and it's what led us to feeling out of control and stuck in the first place. We didn't know where to start, but we need language that is specific enough to help us work with our grief so that we can truly learn to process or metabolize or integrate the needs and truths of our story into who we are becoming. So let's pause because if you're a little overwhelmed right now, join the club. It's a mouthful, and I fully relate to the bigness of approaching ourselves when we're hurting. Where do we even begin? Well, this is where the framework of restorative grief is so helpful because it allows us, even in the middle of our heaviest seasons, to remain aware of each part of our whole selves. Where we start with our own grief support is often like a research project. We start gathering books and details. We ask a lot of questions to try and soothe and comfort our rational mind. We may also believe that our feelings, emotions, and thoughts all come from the same wrong beliefs about loss, preventing us from healing until we get the right information. And from there, we feel a longing in our souls to reconcile our current truths to the things we used to believe about life and loss, because now nothing makes sense. And in the middle of all the noise, we still don't know where to begin. Well, I'm a firm believer that in order to get where we want to go, we have to first know where we're starting. And if I start with a false premise that my feelings, emotions, and thoughts are all jumbled together, it's no wonder the details don't make sense. Our whole selves include our mind, heart, body, and spirits. And that's the important part to start with in the restorative grief model. In this framework, the soul encapsulates all of those crucial pieces to express a full manifestation of the miracle of you. I won't go too far into it, but recently I've spent a lot of time meditating on how otherworldly it feels to realize that the science behind the atomic composition of a human being is understood to some degree. I mean, we're literally made of energy that just so happens to be vibrating at the right frequency to remain together and give us sentience. I can't even comprehend it. But the reason I mention our sentience is that as we age, grieve, eat, move, or use our physical self in any way, we are affecting the way those atoms vibrate together. Denying this would be madness, and yet it's the first thing we do as grievers. We deny our physical selves by paying more attention to what our emotions or our thoughts need, ignoring what some physical or spiritual support could offer. I want to pause for a moment because it could be really easy to let your inner shame narrative get noisy right now. So take a moment and remind yourself that that response is normal and expected. You are learning a new way of thinking, and you're not obligated to do or accept anything I say as truth. Your grief journey and experience is wildly unique. This is my take on a helpful framework that can move us away from shame and into intentional healing. So, how do we refrain from denying our whole selves, but still give the attention needed to each of our hurting parts? Well, first, we define them. I recently heard a world renowned grief expert claiming that emotions and feelings are the same thing. They're interchangeable in conversation or written form. So, because it's me, I pushed back loudly. Because while they may share characteristics, they're very different. The belief that they are one and the same is common, however. And that is one of the first ways we fail to support ourselves well. We don't even understand what's going on within us. Our whole self includes mind, heart, body, and spirit, okay? Our mind holds our thoughts, our heart expresses our emotions, our bodies experience our feelings, and our spirits engage or disengage with ourselves and those around us. Emotions are quick, automatic, and often unconscious responses to an external stimulus. They're reactions, and they can affect our mind, body, and spirit before we've even noticed a change. Emotions like fear activate our autonomic nervous systems, either preparing us to calmly address the external influence or to freeze and shut down as a response looking for safety. Our minds and our hearts work together very quickly thanks to emotions, often before we notice the effect they have on one another. The thoughts we have about a situation will be influenced by how our heart feels toward the people involved, changing the way we act. I know this sounds simple, but this is the stuff that we forget when we're grieving. So it's here in those thoughts that we ruminate, dragging our thoughts back and forth over the cheese grater of our emotional selves, sincerely believing that if we can make the thought small and manageable enough, we can solve our problem. Our heart and mind work quickly together, often before we notice the effect they have on one another. The thoughts we have about a situation will be influenced by how our heart feels toward the people involved, changing the way we act. It's here that we ruminate, dragging our thoughts back and forth through our emotions, sincerely believing that we will make sense of the chaos if we just think through it long enough. And while our mind is searching for hidden understanding, our heart is either confused and mistrusted or denied its honest expression. Often we think if an emotion we experience is not love, then it must be wrong and not okay to experience or express. But nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, when your heart begins expressing less comfortable emotions, it is time to pay attention. This is the sense of self within you that wants to love and be loved. If it is prevented from doing so, tending to that blockage is necessary for healing. And we see this all the time in grief. Now, going back to our feelings, on the other hand, those are physical. They're perceptions in the body that are not necessarily tied to an emotion like feeling cold or tired, but they are a continual readout of the internal state of our lives. This includes our thoughts and emotions, even though we hardly include the body in that conversation. You see, somatic awareness or body intelligence is crucial in grief work, but usually it's overlooked. In Western culture, we've consistently allowed our conscious selves to disconnect from our bodies, either writing them off as, quote, meat bags for our soul or as sin machines waiting for redemption. And I'm aware that there's middle ground and lots of other thoughts on the body, but I'm going to ignore them for the moment. Because to be honest, most of us deny our bodies regardless as a result of just trying to feed the capitalism machine, right? We'll show up to our workplaces sick. We deny ourselves the time it takes to produce healthier food options, and we resist rest because it sounds like a weakness. This is our chance to redeem and rebuild connection to our bodies as we grieve, because learning to notice what a feeling does physically will help us notice how our whole self is affected by that rumination, by hatred, blame, or bitterness, as well as more comfortable emotions like happiness, confidence, excitement, or joy. And the final piece of our whole selves is the spirit. our sense of connectedness to ourselves, others, the world, and our understanding of a greater expansiveness in the universe. When we feel disconnected from any of these things, there are other feelings, emotions, and thoughts that come along with them. You don't have to be someone with a religious practice to be spiritual. Your spirit is the culmination of what you put into the world around you and that which you invite back to yourself as well. We get a little uncomfortable talking about spiritual things in grief because we have options and opinions about faith practices and requirements for healthy spirituality. Well, after 30 years of being involved directly in church, I can tell you that spiritual beliefs alone completely miss the mark when expressed in isolation from the other parts of our whole self. Grief is the arena where we see this the most. Our unanswered prayers, as we'll call them, create voids of understanding because we've all asked why in our grief. And most of us can point to the moment when our spirits simply could no longer navigate the weight of the unknown alone any longer. Even now, I'm a little overwhelmed thinking about how we're supposed to reconnect our whole selves when they get this weighed down by loss. Whether it's fatigue, brain fog, numbness, isolation, we have a place to begin when bringing compassion for each of our parts. We have a place to begin practicing our wholeness instead of just wishing for it. When we grieve, we are in misalignment with our core values. It's not intentional, but it happens without our noticing. The majority of us are not going around placing grief as a core value. And so when the concept is introduced, the vastness of grieving work takes priority. Our core values in that current season of life take a back seat, making as much space as is needed to understand our loss. And this is natural and good for a while. Our coping mechanisms are an internal self defense system doing helpful work to keep us stable. But when those coping mechanisms become so familiar that our sense of self remains a mystery, we owe it to our whole self to step in. For me, I spent way too long in the mental fog of TV and the physical drain of alcohol. I was unable to think my way through situations. My emotions were way too hidden by anger, and my sense of connection was wholly broken. The physical did everything it could to sacrifice and keep me upright, and I felt hopeless. But I also didn't notice what was happening within because I'd allowed myself to consider each part of me as separate from the rest. If 3 out of the 4 areas were fine, then it didn't seem to matter how bad it felt within the fourth. But truthfully, all 4 were a mess, and it just so happened that one arena was stronger than the rest at the time. But in this place, my core values were absent because I hadn't made time to decide what they might be. We've talked about core values plenty of times on this show, so if you're unfamiliar with the idea, go back and listen to some of the older episodes. Core values allow me to hold myself and each part of myself to a new standard of compassion. I can curiously approach my weary thoughts and search out what might be causing each one. I can invite my emotions to stay a little longer, get a little more vocal about what they are and what they're pointing me toward. I can allow the discomfort in my body to manifest, trusting the people I'm around or even myself to create movement that moves the energy of grief through my physical self to metabolize those big feelings. And I can become honest with myself about what I'm experiencing, what I'm lacking, and where I need support the most. I'm going to say one more thing about the body because I've seen it a few places, but I think it's worth mentioning again. If you consider the way an animal in the wild handles its stress, you will see after they are attacked by a predator, if they survive, they stand up and shake their bodies. They literally Taylor Swift themselves into feeling differently about what just happened. And although their sentience is very different than ours, they're not wandering through suspicious of every sound they hear. They've shaken off the tension and the pressure. They've literally metabolized the stress of that moment and moved into the next step of their day. They have moved through their stress instead of wallowing within it, thinking the overthinking is what will help. Your body, your body has so much wisdom within. So if you're still listening and feeling a bit godsmacked about where to actually begin, then I want you to pick a single word. Without overthinking, choose a word that feels good to you. Literally any word will do. Because that word is going to carry meaning for you. If it's a word that easily transitions into a core value like honesty, that's wonderful. Your work is easier than the rest of us. If it's a different kind of word, like a noun or a verb, then your work is to ask yourself what core value that word might be pointing you toward. Chances are high that whatever word you chose, you are tapping into an inner wisdom of your body and bringing attention to your biggest pain point. There are things within you that hurt, things you've ignored or minimized. Your internal world will always reflect the external. So even if you think you're doing a great job of hiding the pain you experience, you're only multiplying your workload as you return to your new sense of self. You are becoming and always in the process of becoming. There is no arrival. With that pressure of completion released, we can look curiously at the core value or word that came to mind and start investing our attention on practices to support our healing instead of shame-driven narratives that keep us quiet about our pain. Thank you for listening to episode 72 of Restorative Grief. I know that was a lot, but I promise it's worthwhile. This whole self model of grief saved my own whole self years ago, and I've been so honored to walk grievers through it as they experience their own healing journey. Funnily enough, it's also a model that works well for life coaching and those trying to sort out what comes next in their journey. So if you find yourself in either camp or even somewhere between the two, reach out. This podcast is but a taste of what intentional direct partnering with a wellness professional can do for your experience of grief, life, and growth. And if you're new here, then welcome. This was a perfect crash course into the model of restorative grief, and I sincerely hope you feel like leaving a shiny 5-star review before you leave. If you're interested in extra support beyond one-on-one coaching or the podcast, you might consider becoming a patron of the show. That little bit of funding each month keeps these episodes afloat, and I am beyond grateful for those who support this podcast. If you're not ready to be a patron, just share this show on your socials. It costs you nothing, and you never know who in your circle is hurting and needs a little boost of love and compassion. And as always, one last thing. Please remember, the only solution for grief is to do the work of grieving. Thanks for listening. I'll see you next week.